Alan. Alan.
Good afternoon and welcome to this joint event between the Standing Committee on United Nations Affairs and the First Committee on Peace and International Security about nuclear disarmament. Before my introduction, I will give the floor to His Excellency, the President of IPU, Mr. Saber Chowdhury.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. I'm also very happy to acknowledge the presence of a number of distinguished personalities who have been great champions in terms of promoting this very challenging agenda. First, Ambassador White Gomez. She's a permanent representative of Costa Rica to the United Nations office in Geneva and President of the UN conference to negotiate a legally binding instrument to prohibit nuclear weapons. We also have with us the President and founder of Global Zero, Mr. Bruce Blair, and who I think, am I able to see? And all present, so all protocols observed, as the Secretary General of the UN says, to save time. I just wanted to welcome you all on behalf of the IPU to what I consider to be a very, very important event. It's not just the recent events in the Korean Peninsula that are attracting our attention. The fact is we now have a basis to move forward, and that basis was created on the 7th of July when there was a groundbreaking treaty on prohibition of nuclear weapons, which was signed up by all 122 member states, non-nuclear member states, all voted for the treaty. We at the IPU have all along tried to keep this issue in our radar. We have tried to maintain the profile. So every time we have an assembly, and this, I think, has been consistent over the last 5 or 6 years. Either it has been a main theme of the Assembly, one of the subjects of discussion for the standing committees, or we have had events such as this. So we are trying to keep the focus, we are trying to retain the profile, and of course trying to get parliamentary action and engagement. It is also, of course, opportune because next year there's going to be the UN high-level conference, which is coming up. And I think the role of parliamentarians is going to be even more important. Of course, when we were looking at it, and now I speak as an MP from Bangladesh, when the previous UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon put forward his 5-point proposal, we made the very important linkage between the monies that are spent on arming a world with nuclear weapons, the amount of money it takes to upkeep them, and we tried to relate that to the resources that are necessary for implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals. I think this becomes obviously a very strong argument because resource constraint is going to be, I think, increasingly coming into focus. This morning, if you were present in the general debate, we had the patriarch of the Russian Orthodox Church because the overall theme of the general debate is how do we use interfaith dialogue, interethnic dialogue to promote peace and create a world free of conflicts. Something very interesting that he mentioned in his speech, which if you haven't been there, I would like to share with you, and that is the imperative of a moral consensus. And he was making the linkage between morality, justice, and of course, legislation. And he says that one cannot be divorced from the other. So the moral imperative when it comes to nuclear weapons is as strong as it has ever been. Should there unfortunately be a nuclear explosion, whether by design or by accident, we all know that we cannot contain its impacts in time or space. So this continues to be one of the major issues which threaten global peace. And of course, IPU is an organization which is focused on peace. This is why We set up the organization, and we hope to achieve that, and we aspire to that through a process of dialogue, and parliamentary diplomacy is very important. So I think although it's a side event, I think it's a very important event in the overall scheme of things. And I certainly commend all of you who are here, because it's not the sort of event that is considered to have a broad general appeal. So I thank you for your commitment. I thank you for promoting this very important cause. And I think as we move forward, now that the treaty is in place, there is certainly a basis and a building block to move forward further. So let me not speak any longer and be in the way of the deliberations that are going to follow. I just wish you all the very best, and I hope that this agenda will continue to be in the forefront of the work of the IPU, because we'll have a new president who is going to be elected in 2 days' time, and I'm sure that this will be as important an agenda for her. It's a woman, we know for sure, because there are only 2 candidates, as it has been for me. Wonderful to see a lot of familiar faces. I'm sure the friendship and the brotherhood will continue, and I look forward to being in touch with you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairperson.
Thank you, Mr. President. My name is Antti Avsand, and I'm the President of the Standing Committee on United Nations Affairs. I have been working together with my dear colleague, Senator Laura Rojas from Mexico, President of the Committee on Peace and International Security, who is not present here today, sorry to say, and with Alan Ware of PNND to organize this special event today. We will be talking about an issue, nuclear disarmament, which is as urgent today as it was 70 years ago. In the wake of the horrific death of hundreds of thousands of innocent people in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, today's nuclear weapons are many times more powerful and more deadly. A simple glance at the headlines enough to make us realize what a dangerous world we live in. Left unchecked, rising tensions may well lead to a new nuclear holocaust, either by accident or by strategic miscalculation. I'm very worried, and I suppose you are too. While the total number of nuclear warheads has decreased since the 1980s, as the Cold War was drawing to a close, there are still some 15,000 of them. The lion's share belongs to just 2 countries, the United States and Russia. The rest of the deadly arsenal is in the hands of 7 other countries, namely France, the United Kingdom, China, India, Pakistan, Israel, and North Korea. You are all familiar with the NPT, the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, that marked the beginning of a process to rid the world of nuclear weapons. That treaty is now over 40 years old, and yet the promise of nuclear disarmament remains unrealized. Trying to break this impasse, last year the General Assembly of the United Nations began a process for the negotiation of a treaty for the prohibition of nuclear weapons. Despite opposition from nuclear states and several of their allies, negotiations concluded this summer on July the 7th with a groundbreaking treaty. 122 countries, a solid majority of UN members, voted for this treaty. My own country, Sweden, decided to support it because it fills a real gap in international law. We have prohibition treaties for biological and chemical weapons already. Why not declare these other weapons of mass destruction, nuclear weapons, equally unlawful? Clearly, the mere prohibition of nuclear weapons does not amount to a de facto elimination. This treaty is an important step toward that goal. Let us remember the grand bargain of the NPT was that the nuclear states would give up their weapons in exchange for guarantee that the non-nuclear states would never seek to acquire such weapons. The 122 non-nuclear states that voted for the Prohibition Treaty are essentially keeping their side of the bargain. They have tied their own hands, so to say, so they will never possess or otherwise transact nuclear weapons. The onus, therefore, is now on the nuclear states and their allies to step up to the plate and maintain their side of the bargain. The Prohibition Treaty offers an opportunity to all states, including the nuclear ones, to join at a later stage. With some patience and determination, this may still be possible. Even the NPT took a long time to become nearly universal. At first, only 91 states voted for it. At this panel discussion, a major opportunity to galvanize attention to the issue of nuclear disarmament will come next year, with the UN will hold a high-level conference on nuclear disarmament. If you are not sure whether your country is among those who voted for the Prohibition Treaty, please refer to the vote record that's available in this room. You also find copies of the actual treaty that you can take home and discuss with colleagues. Now, without further ado, let me introduce our distinguished panel. We are honored and thrilled that Ambassador White Gomez of Costa Rica is here with us today. She presided over the whole negotiations of the new Prohibition Treaty. From that perch, she is uniquely positioned to tell us more about the actual provisions of the treaty, how it will come into force, and more important perhaps, how she sees the impact of the treaty on nuclear non-proliferation and disarmament. Next, as a keynote speaker, I'm honored to introduce Dr. Bruce Blair, a world-renowned expert and author and president and founder of Global Zero. Global Zero is the international movement for the elimination of nuclear weapons. Joining as discussants, each speaking for about 5 minutes, we will have Mr. Alan Ware, whose network is fully mobilized to engage parliamentarians in next year's high-level conference, and finally, Mr. Jean-Marie Collin of GRIP, the Group for Research and Information on Peace and Security. So, I think we are going to get started. Ambassador Gomez, may I invite you to start, please?
Muchas gracias. Voy a permitirme hablar en mi lengua materna, español. Nada más quisiera asegurarme de que tienen ustedes su traducción.
If you'd like to listen in English, it's on channel 3.
Muchas gracias. Primero que todo quiero agradecerle a los organizadores de este evento y al presidente de la Unión Interparlamentaria, además sus palabras de introducción a esta conversación que considero sumamente estratégica. Yo quisiera felicitarles por esta discusión sobre un asunto global de esta naturaleza, porque lo que estamos discutiendo es que la humanidad necesita una buena gobernanza. No podemos resolver los problemas locales sin tener claro cuáles son los problemas globales. No podemos resolver los problemas globales si no articulamos con los tomadores de decisión a nivel nacional. De manera que esta, creo, es una alianza virtuosa que espero pueda seguir en adelante, porque no puede haber un tema más global en este caso como son los riesgos existenciales que tiene la humanidad, que son fundamentalmente el cambio climático y las armas nucleares. Este año es un año especial, el año 2017 es un año especial. Primero, la comunidad internacional ha presenciado con horror las amenazas del uso de las armas nucleares. En un momento en que muchos creían o creíamos que el riesgo del uso de armas nucleares estaba bajo control, sobre todo después de la significativa reducción de arsenales nucleares entre Estados Unidos y la entonces Unión Soviética y Rusia, que siguió al fin de la Guerra Fría. También es especial, evidentemente, porque después de 70 años de tener un clamor importante para prohibir las armas nucleares en el derecho internacional, las Naciones Unidas logró aprobar este tratado en julio de este año. Hoy sabemos que hay un riesgo importante de que estas armas sean utilizadas, ya como lo han mencionado mis antecesores, por accidente, por mal cálculo, por acceso que puedan tener los actores no estatales terroristas. Como si fuera poco, tendríamos que sumar a este riesgo el hecho de que hay un proceso de modernización de los arsenales nucleares y solamente uno de los países nucleares invertiría $1 trillón para lograr esa modernización de ese arsenal. Muchos líderes piensan que el uso de las armas nucleares tiene un impacto geográfico restringido y que si estamos lejos del país atacado, estaremos a salvo. Primero, que este pensamiento es contrario a la solidaridad humana, pero segundo, toda evidencia científica con la que se encuentra en la actualidad señala que cualquier detonación nuclear tendrá impactos en el resto del mundo, sobre todo considerando que cualquier bomba atómica de hoy día es 1000 veces más poderosa que las pequeñas utilizadas en Japón en 1945. No me voy a extender acá a traducir el pensamiento científico y los hallazgos sobre las consecuencias humanitarias. Yo creo que todos conocemos el riesgo que implica para la vida del planeta cualquier detonación en cualquier parte del mundo, incluyendo la solidaridad y el principio de solidaridad humana que implica que ningún, como lo dicen los sobrevivientes de las bombas nucleares de Japón, ningún ser humano debe ser sometido otra vez a este indescriptible sufrimiento. Voy a hacer referencia entonces a un tema para hacer el vínculo con el papel de los parlamentarios en el tema del desarme nuclear y cuál esperanza tenemos para el desarme nuclear. Voy a recordar lo que la Junta de Ciencia y Seguridad nos planteó en este año 2017 en enero. La Junta de Ciencia y Seguridad es la que mantiene el reloj del día final. Cuando nos dijo entonces en enero de este año que la probabilidad de una catástrofe global es muy alta y las acciones necesarias para reducir los riesgos deben tomarse muy pronto. En 2017 encontramos el peligro de ser aún mayor, la necesidad de actuar más urgente. Son 2 minutos y medio hasta la medianoche. El reloj está corriendo, el peligro global se cierne. Y entonces dice, los funcionarios públicos sabios deben actuar de inmediato, alejando a la humanidad del precipicio. Si no lo hacen, los ciudadanos sabios deben dar un paso al frente y liderar el camino. Entonces, esto me lleva a esta gran pregunta y a un planteamiento. La gran pregunta es, entonces, ¿a quién le corresponde la responsabilidad de tomar acciones si no todos los países tenemos armas nucleares? Bueno, la responsabilidad nos corresponde a todos y a cada uno en el ámbito en el que nos estamos desenvolviendo y la función que tenemos en las sociedades. Es una responsabilidad colectiva. Entonces, las Naciones Unidas, en el año 2016, la Asamblea General consideró que este panorama internacional hace aún más urgente actuar, porque la inacción no es una opción, y mantener el status quo sin pasos concretos hacia el desarme nuclear no nos conduce a un mundo más seguro, todo lo contrario. Es por esta razón que la Asamblea General decide hacer uso de uno de los instrumentos a los que tiene acceso la organización, que es el desarrollo normativo. Yo creo que ese es un tema importante de traer a colación en este foro de parlamentarios. Sabemos que al desarrollo normativo le sigue la acción de los líderes políticos para darle vida a las normas jurídicas. Por lo tanto, la Asamblea General convocó con sentido de urgencia a la conferencia diplomática para negociar el Tratado sobre la Prohibición de las Armas Nucleares para que fortalezca y complemente la arquitectura actual, incluyendo el Tratado de No Proliferación y otros componentes del sistema, que sea inclusivo, establezca una categórica prohibición, pero también que incluya algunas opciones para que en el futuro estados nucleares puedan ser parte del tratado y emprender su proceso de destrucción de sus arsenales dentro de las normas jurídicas del tratado. Como ya se mencionó, el 7 de julio de este año, 122 países adoptaron el texto, que fue el primer tratado aprobado en los últimos 20 años en el marco de las Naciones Unidas sobre desarme nuclear. El tratado fue abierto a la firma el 20 de septiembre por el secretario general de las Naciones Unidas. Hoy cuenta con 53 firmas y 3 ratificaciones. El día 6 de octubre, el Comité Noruego del Premio Nobel otorgó a la organización Campaña Internacional para Abolir las Armas Nucleares, ICAN, International Campaign to Abolish Nuclear Weapons, el Premio Nobel de la Paz 2017, precisamente por su papel en relevarle a la ciudadanía del mundo las consecuencias humanitarias de las armas nucleares y por su contribución a hacer realidad el tratado sobre la prohibición de las armas nucleares. Y por eso creo yo que hay que hacer referencia a ese llamado de la Junta de Científicos, cuando nos dice que si los funcionarios públicos no actuamos, los ciudadanos del mundo deben hacerlo. Y quisiera relevar entonces el papel que ha tenido la ciudadanía mundial en mantener la presión sobre los tomadores de decisiones políticas para que este tratado se convierta en una realidad. Aprovecho para extender a ICAN mis calurosas felicitaciones para este logro. Bien, permítame entrar un poco más en la lógica del tratado y el porqué del mismo en el 2017, siendo que el llamado por prohibir las armas nucleares se había ido configurando gradualmente a lo largo de 70 años desde que se usaron por primera vez y en el año 1946 recordemos que la primera resolución que adoptó las Naciones Unidas fue precisamente con el objetivo de eliminar las armas nucleares de los arsenales. Pero este movimiento tomó especial fuerza con el proceso que conocemos, con el impacto humanitario y las conferencias que se realizaron en Noruega, en México y en Austria, que discutieron a profundidad sobre las consecuencias humanitarias y catastróficas de las armas nucleares, lo que generó un nuevo momentum político, nuevos pensamientos, nuevo liderazgo, nueva doctrina y articulación política, nueva estrategia y una fuerza creciente en un proceso que involucró múltiples actores, la academia, los científicos, los activistas, los parlamentarios, los líderes religiosos y por supuesto los diplomáticos. Recordemos que esta nueva fuerza entonces encontró un terreno fértil en las Naciones Unidas que precisamente venía de un año muy productivo, el año 2015. Las Naciones Unidas logró adoptar acuerdos sobre el cambio climático y la agenda para el desarrollo sostenible. Entonces, es lógico que las Naciones Unidas también actúe en el tema del desarme nuclear, que como lo sabemos es una amenaza existencial. ¿Por qué y para qué un tratado de prohibición? Recordemos que el camino de adoptar una norma de prohibición para enfrentar problemas que ya tiene la comunidad internacional ha probado ser la vía efectiva frente a otros problemas como el apartheid, la discriminación racial, las armas químicas y biológicas, las minas antipersonales y las municiones en racimo, por citar algunos ejemplos. Entonces, la experiencia internacional nos indica que el desarrollo de normas jurídicas es necesario para regular la conducta de los estados y es un imperativo de la comunidad internacional crear normas jurídicas para provocar los cambios sociales que buscamos. Frente a la inacción de los foros de las Naciones Unidas, como la Conferencia de Desarme, la Asamblea General decidió actuar. También es cierto que hay la mayoría de los países de las Naciones Unidas hoy son parte de zonas libres o zonas desnuclearizadas. Por lo tanto, es lógico pensar que este grupo de países iban a construir en algún momento una norma global que ayude a llevar hacia adelante y a poner más presión y poner en un lugar central en la agenda global el tema del desarme nuclear. El tratado entonces contiene una prohibición unívoca, fuerte, clara y comprensiva que abarca una amplia gama de actividades relacionadas con las armas nucleares. En esta norma los tratados se comprometen a nunca, bajo ninguna circunstancia, a desarrollar, ensayar, producir, fabricar, adquirir, de cualquier otro modo, poseer o almacenar armas nucleares u otros dispositivos explosivos nucleares. Además, los estados parte nunca transferirán tales armas o dispositivos, no las usarán o amenazarán con usarlas, ni permitirán que estén estacionadas, instaladas o desplegadas en su territorio. Esta norma, una prohibición tan categórica y tan amplia, definitivamente conlleva una innovación, un nuevo pensamiento, una innovación cualitativa y profunda en la manera en que concebimos, abordamos, debatimos y tomamos medidas sobre el desarme nuclear a nivel global. Estigmatiza las armas nucleares, su producción, su tenencia, su uso y su amenaza de uso. Esto conlleva una invitación intrínseca a avanzar con rapidez con pasos concretos. El secretario general de las Naciones Unidas, Antonio Guterres, lo planteó con gran claridad cuando abrió el tratado a la firma el pasado 20 de septiembre, cuando dijo que este instrumento es un paso hacia el objetivo universal de un mundo libre de armas nucleares y deberá revigorizar los esfuerzos de desarme nuclear. El tratado entonces también contempla normas y procedimientos para que, y obligaciones principales para que países, todos los países, incluyendo países nucleares, puedan acceder al tratado y que estos últimos emprendan sus procesos de desarme dentro de las obligaciones jurídicas establecidas. Entre ellas, la obligación de poner las armas para aquellos estados que las poseen, poner las armas nucleares inmediatamente fuera de estado operativo y destruirlas lo más pronto posible, pero a más tardar en un plazo que determinará la primera reunión de los estados partes, de conformidad con un plan que cada estado tendría que presentar un plan jurídicamente vinculante que cada estado tendría que presentar y que sería negociado también con la Conferencia de Estados Partes, donde deben incluirse plazos concretos para la eliminación verificada e irreversible del programa de armas nucleares de ese estado parte, incluida la eliminación o conversión irreversible de todas las instalaciones relacionadas con armas nucleares y la colaboración con una autoridad internacional competente y la reunión de estados partes y la colaboración con la reunión de estados partes para el proceso de verificación. Quisiera señalar también que este tratado es también diferente de normas que se hayan desarrollado recientemente porque le da una vida y unas funciones más fuertes a la Conferencia de Estados Parte. La reunión de Estados Parte tiene la posibilidad de desarrollar instrumentos o protocolos sobre medidas para la eliminación verificada con plazos e irreversible de los programas de armas nucleares, incluyendo protocolos adicionales al tratado. También está facultada para continuar tomando decisiones sobre aspectos del régimen que necesitan un desarrollo futuro, como son la definición de una secretaría o de otros órganos de tratados para ayudar en la implementación del mismo y en la identificación o creación de una autoridad internacional competente. En términos generales, es muy importante señalar que en virtud de que lamentablemente los estados de la comunidad nuclear decidieron desvincularse con este proceso, y dado que la acción propia del desarme nuclear tiene una naturaleza contractual, era importante que este tratado le diera potestades a la Conferencia de Estados Parte de negociar expresamente con los países hacia adelante y dejar abiertas posibilidades para el desarrollo futuro de la norma. También hay una innovación en las disposiciones relativas a la asistencia a las víctimas, que son compatibles con el derecho internacional de derechos humanos, y hay disposiciones sobre cooperación internacional que reconocen la responsabilidad de ayudar a otros estados partes afectados y de aplicar medidas de remediación ambiental y cooperación y asistencia internacionales. Este nuevo tratado se suma a la arquitectura vigente, se une al Tratado de Prohibición Completa de Ensayos Nucleares, el Tratado de No Proliferación de las Armas Nucleares. Esto nos lleva entonces a plantear cuáles son los siguientes pasos después de que tenemos un tratado de prohibición de las armas nucleares. Y nos lleva a poner entonces esta pregunta en contexto de a quién le corresponde actuar. Y en este momento, conversando con parlamentarias y parlamentarios, me permito realizar un primer llamado sobre 3 ideas fuerza. La primera de ellas es la pronta entrada en vigencia del Tratado de Prohibición. Yo quisiera instar a las naciones que ya han firmado el tratado y a los congresistas de estas naciones a emprender un proceso acelerado para su pronta ratificación. Se requieren 50 ratificaciones para que el tratado entre en vigor. A los congresistas de esos 53 países que ya firmaron, les invito entonces a tomar un papel central y a llevarse a sus casas la tarea de promover una pronta ratificación. A los países que negociaron y aprobaron el tratado y que aún no han firmado, les invito a acelerar sus consultas internas para poder contar lo más pronto posible con los primeros 100 países signatarios. Quisiéramos evolucionar e invitarles a ustedes a esta campaña por tener los primeros 100 países signatarios. Esto no es una tarea difícil, pues ya tenemos 53 que lo han hecho. A los 53 países que ya se han adelantado a firmar, yo les insto a que adapten su discurso y su acción política a los compromisos que ya están incluidos en el tratado. Voy a señalar especialmente el artículo 12 del tratado, que incluye la obligación de emprender esfuerzos e involucrarse con los estados no miembros, con los estados no firmantes, a fin de promover que se incorporen al tratado y a fin de promover las normas en él contenidas. Es decir, ya hay una obligación expresa de que adoptemos entonces el discurso de la prohibición de las armas nucleares y de la ilegalidad y la estigmatización de las armas nucleares. Hay una otra acción que quisiera invitarlos a pensar y a involucrarse en ella, que es en el reforzamiento del diálogo entre los gobiernos, la sociedad civil y las organizaciones internacionales. Requerimos una acción innovadora y un diálogo político innovador. Y en esto, permítame decir, y esta es una reflexión personal que tengo, tomó muchos recursos y una gran innovación científica y tecnológica poder desarrollar las armas nucleares. Allá en los años 40, el proyecto Manhattan requirió de $1 billón y más de 700 personas, científicos, para poder desarrollar la bomba atómica. Bueno, hoy necesitamos de una cantidad importante de recursos y de muchas personas, científicos y académicos, pensando en, primero, cómo logramos una articulación virtuosa entre todos los componentes de la actual arquitectura de las Naciones Unidas. La arquitectura del desarme y la no proliferación contiene diversos componentes normativos, que son tratados, tenemos foros, tenemos procesos y tenemos negociaciones. Y negociaciones para generar nuevos instrumentos y negociaciones como las que podrían en la actualidad generarse con respecto a Corea del Norte, por ejemplo. Se debe reconocer el valor agregado de cada espacio, de cada proceso, con respeto y claridad de propósito de cada uno para que haya un funcionamiento integral de esta arquitectura, entre el Tratado de No Proliferación, el Tratado de Prohibición Completa de Ensayos Nucleares, el Tratado de Prohibición y todos los procesos políticos que hay a nivel global y regional para lidiar con el problema de las armas nucleares. Tenemos que abandonar como nos ha planteado la Secretaría de las Naciones Unidas, tenemos que abandonar este diálogo de contraposición entre el Tratado de Prohibición y el Tratado de No Proliferación y de una manera creativa llegar a un diálogo político que nos permita mirar cómo vamos a articular todos los componentes del sistema y cómo vamos a revigorizar todos los foros políticos que están detenidos por varias décadas y cómo vamos a promover un avance concreto en las negociaciones multilaterales, regionales y bilaterales sobre desarme nuclear. Nosotros también esperamos que, y me congratulo realmente porque estos esfuerzos hayan recibido el premio, hayan sido merecedores de haber recibido el Premio Nobel de la Paz 2017. Nosotros esperamos que este Premio Nobel vigorice el debate nacional y global para sumar firmas y ratificaciones al tratado, con la esperanza de que en muy pocos años todos los países comprendan que la voz expresada en este tratado es la voz de una humanidad que está empeñada en sobrevivir como especie y en vivir en un mundo libre de armas nucleares. A todos ustedes, parlamentarias y parlamentarios del mundo, yo les invito con toda la fuerza de mi espíritu a tomar el papel estratégico que tienen todos ustedes para lograr estos tres procesos. Lograr los primeros 100 signatarios, lograr las primeras 50 ratificaciones para entrada en vigencia del tratado y incentivar a todos los gobiernos a involucrarnos en un proceso de diálogo constructivo para articular positiva y constructivamente a todos los componentes de la arquitectura de las Naciones Unidas, de manera tal que podamos revigorizar esta arquitectura para el bien de la humanidad y de poder tener pasos concretos hacia el desarme nuclear y la destrucción de los arsenales. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Ms. Ambassador. It was very interesting to hear you. And now I will give the floor to the next speaker, Dr. Blair. You have the floor, please.
Thank you, Chairperson. I'm very, very pleased to be here, and I'm honored to join Ambassador White-Gomez and this distinguished panel for this discussion, and wish to thank especially Alan Ware, PNND, and Anda Phillip of the IPU for their terrific support for this session and for my participation. I have 4 very straightforward points that I wish to put on the table, and then I will elaborate on each one of them. First, the nuclear situation is very dangerous. Secondly, we are entering a period of nuclear chaos, a chaotic phase of the nuclear era, and it's going to make this danger even more serious. Third is that the first order of business, I believe, is not disarmament, but rather to build trust through confidence-building measures among the parties. And for, if we get through this chaotic phase that's looming ahead, then we can hopefully return to normal disarmament discourse, in which case I believe the way forward will be a step-by-step process. So let me begin with the sort of almost self-evident point that the nuclear situation is very dangerous. I've elaborated on this at length when I have spoken to the humanitarian consequences meetings in Mexico and Vienna, and I have such a long list of things that can result in the use of nuclear weapons that I hesitate to even begin to discuss this topic. But let me just mention a few of the things at the top of the list that I think everyone should appreciate. First and foremost, around the globe, there are regional tensions that have clear potential to escalate to the level of nuclear confrontation and possible nuclear conflict. Obviously on the Korean Peninsula, also in South Asia, also in this very region here between the US, NATO, and Russia, and also in the South China Sea, involving American and Chinese clashes of interest. A couple of the items that I think I always want to mention in this context is that, first of all, the United States and Russia, both of whom are expecting the worst of each other more and more these days, keep their nuclear arsenal on hair trigger alert. Now, I mean, do you know what that means? It means that if the order were given right now by President Trump and President Putin, that within 5 minutes of that order being given, thousands of nuclear warheads would be launched on missiles with flight times of 30 minutes to the other side of the planet. And within 1 hour, the Northern Hemisphere would be in ruins, and the rest of the world would be in very big trouble. There are 9 nuclear weapons countries, most of whom have absolute authority over the ordering of the use of nuclear weapons. There may be 2 exceptions. Several of these leaders, I believe, are unstable, and they're engaging in brinksmanship, which could very easily tip over the line into a nuclear confrontation. This brinksmanship is reflected right here in this very region, the Baltics and the Gulf of Finland, is captured by the fact that there are hundreds of incidents just in this region every year involving US, NATO, and Russian aircraft and ships that are in close proximity and are running risks of accidents and unauthorized actions every day. Lastly, I would mention that in Asia, the nuclear arsenals are expanding rapidly, and that in this region of the world, the nuclear arsenals are, they lack the safeguards that have evolved on the arsenals of the United States and Russia and France and the UK. These weapons in Asia are accidents waiting to happen. They lack the safeguards that are necessary to prevent, say, a nuclear weapon from exploding if it's dropped from a plane, or exploding if, say, a Taliban mortar is lobbed onto a Pakistani nuclear weapons deployment along the border with India. So in short, the world's nuclear arsenals are primed to go off by accident or by design today. today. So I say the situation is getting worse. Why? We are entering a very difficult period, and one of the main reasons for this is because I believe that in just a short period of time, perhaps 2 to 3 years, nuclear arms control between Russia and the United States will collapse. It'll collapse over the dispute between them on violations of an important Cold War treaty known as the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty. It'll collapse because of U.S.-Russian obstinance and challenges over the New START agreement and the future of that agreement. I believe that it will not be extended, and that this history of decades-long negotiations of strategic arms control between the two sides will collapse, and that we will be living in short order in a time of much greater uncertainty, unpredictability, mutual suspicion, and overcompensation by the two parties a la nuclear arms buildups. And so what's going to fill this vacuum? It's unknown. One thing I do believe is that the two sides will double down on their nuclear warfighting policies. The nuclear review underway by the Trump administration will be completed by the end of this year, and I believe that it will be horrifying in its tone, its rhetoric, and in some of the proposals that it puts forward, including a new thrust to develop smaller, so-called mini nuclear weapons that will, in the minds of those pushing these ideas, will make the use of nuclear weapons more feasible. I believe that the consequence of this breakdown will also be the deployment by Russia of some of the most hideous weapon systems ever invented by mankind, including a submarine drone armed with a very high-yield nuclear weapon designed to be launched from a place like the Barents Sea and then to travel at high speed underwater for thousands of miles to arrive at a port somewhere like New York City, explode, destroy the port, and contaminate the city for the indefinite future with radioactive fallout. In fact, the weapons being designed for this submarine drone are being laced with materials intended to maximize the amount of radioactive fallout that could be produced by this weapon. I just would mention a couple of more developments that are pretty obvious that could exacerbate this chaotic phase that we are about to enter. First of all, we all know that North Korea's crash nuclear program is proceeding nicely, thank you, and that it is exerting pressure on South Korea to restart its nuclear weapons program. It's putting pressure on the CTBT, and of course it's raising the level in conjunction with brinksmanship with the United States, raising the level of confrontation to the point where it would take only a spark, I think, to ignite a conflict that could escalate to the use of nuclear weapons. And then finally, of course, we all know the Iran deal could crash at any time. So in short, the nuclear chaos is looming, and with it will come a growing risk of the deliberate or unintentional use of nuclear weapons. Third, the first order of business are confidence-building measures, and let me just mention a few of the lead items on this agenda in my mind. These won't be easy. You would think that they could be readily negotiated and implemented because they're so clear, they're so commonsensical, but it won't be easy. Before coming here, I was at the Élysée Palace in Paris and at the Defense Ministry, and then I went to NATO headquarters and had high-level meetings with officials from those places, and I can tell you that it won't be a very easy sell. These agencies of defense love their nuclear weapons, and nevertheless, they seriously entertained some of the ideas that I want to just quickly put on the table here. One, first and foremost, I think, is that all nuclear weapon states should declare jointly, perhaps through a UN process, that a nuclear war cannot be won and must never be fought. This was a statement made jointly by Reagan and Gorbachev in the 1980s. Secondly, these states should pledge that they will never use nuclear weapons against a non-nuclear weapons country, unconditionally, and that they will never use their nuclear weapons first against other nuclear weapon states, no first use. I think that these should be, again, unconditional and binding and could be pursued through a UN process, possibly even a treaty. A couple of other items that have been put forward in previous NPT reviews and so forth that I think remain important items to pursue. First, there should be a stand down, a de-alert by the United States and Russia of their use or lose missiles in silos and get them off their 60-second launch readiness. 60 seconds is how long it takes. I served as a Minuteman launch officer in my youth, and my job was to launch along with another young person, and also in his early 20s, launch up to 50 intercontinental missiles, each carrying a very high-yield nuclear bomb. And our checklist for carrying out the order to launch took only 60 seconds for us to carry out. Things have not gotten any longer than that. And finally, I believe that the U.S. and Russia should clarify the number and the location of their tactical nuclear weapons, their shorter range weapons that are based here in Europe, as a confidence building measure, and even go so far as relocating those weapons from their combat bases back to national central storage. And lastly, I would just mention the U.S. and North Korea need immediately to establish, without any preconditions, a direct dialogue between the two countries. It's sort of absurd to my mind that they don't. There are many, many other confidence building measures for South Asia and other regions that are important, but time to just beyond the scope of my presentation here. Finally, if we get through this crisis that's looming ahead and we survive and we're able to restore some semblance of normal relationships with a semblance of trust and can get back to the business of negotiating nuclear arms reductions on the path to zero, then I believe the path forward is very straightforward. It was laid out by the Nobel Committee when it awarded the Nobel Prize to ICANN, which I also congratulate. And I also wish to congratulate the maestro negotiator of that treaty, Ambassador White Gomez. It was an incredible achievement. But let me quote from the Nobel Committee's press release when they announced the award. They say that, let me put on my glasses here, that the next step is for the nuclear armed states, presumably all 9 of them or 8 of them, to initiate serious negotiations with a view to the gradual, balanced, and carefully monitored elimination of the almost 15,000 weapons in the world, end quote. And I think that's exactly right. That's exactly the way forward. That is the global zero vision of the path forward. The nuclear armed states will have to negotiate a practical treaty for themselves. A couple of the key dimensions of that treaty, and then I'll wrap up here, that I think are important, is that such a multilateral treaty will physically require at least 10 years to verifiably destroy all of the weapons, all these 15,000 weapons, plus some additional materials, a lot of additional materials in storage. And that timeline only begins after we actually figure out how you verify nuclear weapons without disclosing, revealing that's how World War III is going to start right there. Without disclosing the classified details of the design of those weapons. We have never, ever, ever in our arms control negotiations verifiably monitored and verified even a single nuclear weapon. That's a long pole in this tent. Also, an important consideration is that clearly the parties, no single party is going to eliminate their nuclear arsenal unless their adversaries have joined into the process. This multilateral process will fall well short of the complete elimination of nuclear weapons unless and until all of the parties that are adversarial enter into and participate fully in the treaty. During this lengthy drawdown, which would last, I would guess, on the order of 15 years or longer, maybe 2 decades, all of these countries will retain nuclear arsenals as they phase them out, as they reduce them, and they will insist during that drawdown on the right of self-defense as it is given to those countries by the UN Charter, Article 51. They will insist on the right to threaten the use of nuclear weapons for purposes of deterrence and to respond with nuclear weapons if attacked by them in accordance with the right of self-defense. The nuclear-armed countries, in my view, will never join a treaty that requires them to disavow deterrence during the process of their disarmament, which would in effect implicate themselves in criminal activity. It's just it's beyond the pale. Well, let me wrap up because I've gone on too long here just by saying that I think that disarmament will only happen through a step-by-step process, and it will require a treaty negotiated by the nuclear weapons countries, and the treaty will require details, elaborate verification and enforcement mechanisms, and a great deal of trust that needs to be rebuilt over the next 10 years. So with that, I think I'll stop. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Blair. It was very interesting to hear your presentation. We will now go further, and we will have some remarks for about 5 minutes each from Mr. Alan Ware and from Mr. Jean-Marie Collin. We will start with Mr. Alan Ware. You have the floor.
Thank you very much. I want to start by thanking Mr. Avsam, President of the IPU Standing Committee on United Nations Affairs, and also Senator Rojas, the President of the Standing Committee on Peace and International Security, for bringing together as a joint session, a joint interactive session on this topic, because this is, of course, of relevance to both the UN Committee and the Committee on Peace and International Security. So thank you very much for that. And also thank you to the committees for their openness to bringing in experts and organisations in order to be able to assist with the process of engaging parliamentarians. So PND has been involved with particularly the Standing Committee on Peace and International Security for a number of years to assist on the nuclear disarmament issue. Thank you also to the two speakers, Ambassador White-Gomez, putting forward a comprehensive approach to the prohibition of nuclear weapons, and congratulations for the expertise and the leadership and the vision in bringing those negotiations to a very quick conclusion This was a treaty that was negotiated much faster than I've seen any other treaty of that nature negotiated. And that came very much from the vision and the expectation put forward by Ambassador White Gomez when she basically challenged the states, we're coming here, we're going to finish by July the 7th, and they did. So congratulations to you, and also to ICANN, the organisation which provided a lot of the civil society support and engagement for it. And I think it was also incredibly valuable to have Bruce Blair, founder of Global Zero, to give an overview of the politics and the really dangerous situation that we are in the world with the risks from nuclear weapons, and a different approach to this issue, one of reducing the risks and the importance of reducing the risks of these conflicts escalating into nuclear conflicts and the risk of nuclear weapons being used by accident or miscalculation or even intent. This was a very important approach. These are two different approaches, a comprehensive approach and an incremental approach. And what I see is the value of the Inter-Parliamentary Union and also of the United Nations is that both of these international organisations provide a platform for both of these approaches to be brought forward and to be advanced in complementary ways, to even bridge the gap that has existed in some communities between the comprehensive and incremental approach. Because I believe we're going to need both approaches to be able to get to a nuclear weapons-free world. In that sense, I think that was reflected very well by the resolution adopted by the Inter-Parliamentary Union in 2014 on a nuclear weapons-free world, the role of parliamentarians, because it put forward both the comprehensive approach of a nuclear weapons convention or a package of agreements, and also incremental approaches such as comprehensive test ban treaty, stockpile reduction, de-alerting, establishment of regional nuclear weapon-free zones, and some other measures in that. And so PND has been working with the Inter-Parliamentary Union on follow-up to the 2014 IPU resolution, on how to turn that resolution into concrete actions that parliamentarians can take. And those actions may differ depending on the geostrategic equation in the area in your country or in the countries of the parliamentarians acting. And that's where having a menu of approaches and initiatives, having examples of initiatives which have been developed and adopted and can contribute, we've found to be very useful. In the UN, this is also occurring, and it's very heartening to see the Inter-Parliamentary Union taking a much more proactive role in supporting and engaging and in assisting parliamentarians to engage in UN processes over the various issues in the UN. And this one on nuclear risk reduction, non-proliferation, security and disarmament is one area. So these UN processes are across the spectrum. We've already heard about the negotiations for the treaty on the prohibition of nuclear weapons, a very successful UN process to adopt the treaty, and now of course the challenge is the signing and the ratification of it. There are also UN processes on the range of issues and measures which Bruce Blair talked about, de-alerting, for example. There is a UN General Assembly resolution to raise that issue, plus other work on that. On verification, there is a UN process on building expertise on verification and what will be required for, to verify agreements on nuclear disarmament. On nuclear weapon-free zones, there are UN processes to support not just the existing nuclear weapon-free zones, but proposals for additional ones. In particular, a zone free of nuclear weapons and other weapons of mass destruction in the Middle East. Now that process is stalled for the moment, but we hopefully will see that picking up again. The President of the Inter-Parliamentary Union, Sebastian Albury, talked about disarmament and sustainable development issue, and that's also been picked up in the United Nations in General Assembly resolution and in Security Council sessions on looking at the financial and scientific and personnel resources that are put into the military enterprise, and where there might be some possibilities of redirecting some of those to economic and social needs, which is a requirement under the UN Charter, Article 26. And I know, I see Kazakhstan is here, that's one of the countries which has picked up this initiative and put forward concrete proposals on how to redirect some of the military resources into meeting sustainable development goals. There are a number of other incremental measures, such as the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty, which has been negotiated successfully, hasn't entered into force yet, but is in operation. But one of the ones, the recent ones, which is picking up on the range of these issues and giving a platform to elevate them, is the United Nations High-Level Conference on Nuclear Disarmament, which will be held in 2018. So this is established by the United Nations General Assembly. It's open for all member states of the United Nations to participate. It's also open to role of parliamentarians and civil society. The UN General Assembly resolution for this specifically mentions the important role of parliamentarians. It has an open platform to be able to advance both the nuclear risk reduction measures, the incremental measures, but also a comprehensive approach. One suggestion has been that this goal of 100 signatures for the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, perhaps we can put that out as a goal to achieve by the UN High-Level Conference on Nuclear Disarmament. Give a date for countries. That date is May the 14th to 16th. So if parliamentarians in countries which haven't yet signed put that date into their parliament and put questions to their governments, is it possible for us to sign either before or at the UN High-Level Conference on Nuclear Disarmament so we can reach 100 signatories? The high-level conferences also will build on success or learn from the success of other high-level conferences. This is the first UN General Assembly High-Level Conference on Nuclear Disarmament. So on the nuclear disarmament side, it's a little uncharted, but we have the experience of sustainable development, of climate change, of oceans, of refugees and migrants to build on processes. And finally, to help that, we've followed up the 2014 IPU resolution with a parliamentary action plan for a nuclear weapons-free world, which gives some outline of the UN processes, plus examples of what some parliaments have already done to give ideas, again, of what other parliaments can do. But not just on the UN High-Level Conference on Nuclear Disarmament for next year, but also leading up to the review of the Non-Proliferation Treaty in 2020. And those booklets are over on the side there if you want them. So once again, thank you very much to the two committee chairs, and I look forward to the interchange with parliamentarians on how you can be active in supporting these issues. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ware. Now, finally, I will give the floor to Mr. Collin.
Merci beaucoup. Je vais essayer d'être assez direct, de parler que 5 minutes, puisque je sais que vous êtes là, vous avez aussi besoin de vous exprimer, c'est important. Je suis désolé aux interprètes, je vais peut-être parler un petit peu rapidement, et je serai prêt à répondre à vos questions sur la question du traité d'interdiction. Tout d'abord, je voudrais signaler qu'en tant que membre de ICANN, je suis très fier, on est très heureux d'avoir reçu ce prix Nobel, un prix Nobel j'ai appris lorsque j'étais à l'Assemblée nationale.
Sorry, just a second.
Yeah.
Sorry, which channel is English? I know, but it's not. Is it back to 3? Sorry, could the interpreter please speak in English?
Okay, hold on a minute. Hold on a minute. I do not receive Russian for me to translate it into English, and when I learned about the Nobel Prize, it's a good sign, and it is a sign that we can work together with parliamentarians, and I'm happy today that the IPU is dealing with this subject over here in St. Petersburg, where the TPNW is giving to the mankind, and what Ms. Gomez said is a revolution that happened in St. Petersburg 100 years ago. It is a peaceful revolution with respect to nuclear disarmament. We are aware that it will take some time, and that's what we need to do today. Today we are facing nuclear threats and employing nuclear weapons either intentionally or accidentally, and all will have to face the effects and the eventualities. The prohibition of nuclear weapons give a new chance and new opportunities, and the law is created to address an issue, not when it is eliminated. And we are having the TPNW because nuclear weapons does exist, and we do not have the law to make it illegal, something that we did for chemical, bacteriological weapons. This treaty is a law, and some believe that a couple of weeks will be enough to conclude to finalize the treaty. But the discourse started many years ago, and this law, this treaty, strengthens and enhances humanitarian law, and I would like to talk about the French Red Cross that until now was hesitant about addressing this issue, but after the TPNW was taken, it locked in, and it organized a number of the conferences and round tables that took place in France. Specifically, what could parliamentarians do? And you can address two major points. Nationally, you should pressure your governments that have signed this treaty to have it ratified. For those who have not signed it but participated in the discussion, they should sign it, and you should start thinking together with your allies, for example, the countries that you have the common language. For example, when we talk about the countries united by Portuguese language, all of those Portuguese-speaking countries sign it, with the exception of Portugal. So the Portuguese parliamentarians and Brazilian parliamentarians could open a dialogue, and it refers to French-speaking countries as well. Most of the French-speaking countries, of the French-speaking communities, sign the treaty, and they should liaison with their colleagues from the other countries. Internationally, it is possible to launch the process that I would like to refer to as snow avalanche. And we should kick off the process, and the more you talk about it, the wider is the impact of this process on your partners. You deepen the dialogue, and you lift the taboo from the discussion of those subjects. Of course, a great role is played by the civil society that is ready to give an expert estimate. Speaking about the specific actions, we have parliamentarians over here, and I cooperate with ICANN and PNDD, and I have printed a document. It is in Spanish over here. It is an undertaking of the parliamentarians to work to promote the prohibition of nuclear weapons in your countries. And the document is available in the other languages. It will be conducive to embrace this policy and the processes that should be intrinsic in our countries. The nuclear weapons is the challenge that affects us all. In conclusion, I would like to note that today the international community is facing two major catastrophes. It is global warming and nuclear weapon proliferation. With the documents undertaken, in Paris, we plan to stop climate change, and regarding the second issue, there are only 9 countries, nuclear powers, and we can stop the process, and it's in your hands. With your expertise, we can make changes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Collin. Before I open the floor, I mentioned in the introduction this treaty available in this room. What is interesting with this treaty is that it's the first time, as I know, parliamentarians are mentioned specifically in this way in a treaty. And that's a sign of the closer cooperation between parliamentarians, parliaments, the IPU and the UN. And take a treaty each if it's enough, I don't know, but try to grab one and look at the treaty, and we'll see parliamentarians mentioned specifically. So, and that's maybe thanks to Ambassador White Gomez. I don't know, but maybe, yeah. I will now open the floor, and I can say that we haven't so very much time, so I try to go through all those who want the floor and have short interventions, please, because otherwise someone is not going to be able to say anything. So, 2 minutes, questions, comments, or something, and then we can respond from the panel.
Just to be clear, I have a list. The list is now closed. I will tell you it's India, Argentina, France, Bahrain, Bangladesh, Iran, Marshall Islands, and Pakistan. Guys, there just isn't enough time. At that rate, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's 14 minutes. Sorry, 14 minutes, and we have to ask the panelists to make a summation. This meeting ends at 5:30. If there's time, Thailand, I see you. We will try if there's time. Keep track, 2 minutes, and I will give you the signal.
Okay, then we start with India.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and my dear delegates and guests. My country, India, has a long-standing commitment to the goal of complete nuclear disarmament based on the principles of universality, non-discrimination, and international verification. India has played an active role in the international community's endeavors towards achieving this goal. India did not join the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty in 1970, as the treaty failed to address India's concerns and artificially created a divide between the nuclear weapon haves and have-nots. It remains committed to the objectives of global non-proliferation and disarmament. As far as the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons is concerned, India did not participate in the substantive sessions of UN conference due to the concerns regarding the impact of the proposal on the existing disarmament machinery. However, as a responsible nuclear power, India's nuclear doctrine continues to stress a policy of credible minimum deterrence with the posture of no first use against nuclear weapon states and non-use against non-nuclear weapon states. India is prepared to convert these undertakings into multilateral legal agreements. We further reiterate our commitment to a nuclear weapon-free world to be achieved through a step-by-step process undertaken by a universal commitment and an agreed global and non-discriminatory framework while maintaining the primacy of the Conference on Disarmament. Thank you.
Thank you, India. And next is Argentina, and after that, France. Argentina, you have the floor.
Gracias, señor presidente. Quiero agradecer esta posibilidad de plantear la posición oficial de Argentina respecto.
Sorry, the interpreter has not got the Russian to translate it into English.
I'm
But
sorry.
since
No,
White
I know,
Gomez,
we got an interpreter for a few minutes. Can I just move you down on the list and maybe you can switch it to English? Because you're good.
it's
Okay. I'll just stop the clock and
Okay.
we'll go reset.
Then we take France, you have the floor.
Madame le Président, Monsieur, pardon.
Mr. Chair, Madam Secretary, dear colleagues, I'm from France and we are a nuclear power. Since 1962, we are under the fatal sword of Damocles. The treaty between the two nuclear superpowers did not result in tangible deliverables. We are talking about the equilibrium fear, and we have shifted the equilibrium now. And I do not to accuse anybody, but the military agenda of different countries is not conducive to some countries bringing down the risks. And
Nous sommes été affectés à l'enseignement, nous aurions insisté. Les ministres du gouvernement en France, comme dans la majorité des pays, sont nommés, pas élus. Nous, parlementaires, sommes...
Sorry, I've lost my relay language. We parliamentarians are the real representatives of our people, and we should give the word of peace to the peoples. The ministers of the government of France are appointed and not elected, and only we parliamentarians are the legal representatives of the peoples of the world. We should give the word of peace. A poet, philosopher Paul Valery used to say, war is elimination of destruction of people who do not know each other by people who know one another but do not control themselves. Thank you.
Especially the issue of the nuclear tests, are as follows. An international resolution must be drafted in IPU criminalizing the position of a nuclear weapon, of facilitating the transfer, position of use of such weapons from states, entities, all military marshals. An international resolution criminalizing the position of weapon from irregular armed group inside or outside the states which affect peace and security within states at the regional and international levels. For example, in Lebanon, Iraq, Syria, Yemen, militias supported by regional forces is an example. Activate the role of the International Atomic Energy Agency in the inspection, monitoring, and prohibition of comprehensive nuclear tests. There is no real mechanisms from the implementation of the CTBT other than the voluntary protocol, and the mechanisms must be found to stop the threats related to the arms race for weapons of mass destructions. In addition, too many questions about the role of the IAEA in the case of position of nuclear weapon. 44 countries signed since 1996, but we cannot see that there is more countries in adding. And there is also, nowadays, there is a medical radiation, 5 micro in the European country, but no any country come up to say that this is happening in their region. So we need a true stories saying, but not denying that there is nothing happening there. Thank you.
Thank you, Bahrain. Next is Bangladesh, and after that, Iran. Bangladesh, you have the floor.
Mr. President, we have got 2 minutes, we share it. I'll go for 1 minute, my friend will go for another minute. The number one thing, in 1 minute you cannot phrase your everything. But what I will say, nowadays, after this session, I will believe in God more, because I fully agree with Dr. Blair. This is a chaotic phase we have to cross. If we survive another 3 years, then we can think about another 10 years. And the way the world is pursuing its path, it is absolutely unpredictable. But I don't want to give a hopeless message to everybody. As a soldier, I will believe in one thing. I know future is bleak, but I will go on fighting. After that, I want to add one more words only. These things which you are telling respect, the bishop is telling moral conscience, and somebody is telling humanity. These are important, absolutely important, ugly words right at the moment in the world. It has got no meaning. If we don't mean it seriously, to conclude, in 1973, the father of Bangladesh nation, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, unilaterally decide, and it is in our constitution, we will never go nukes. We will never go nuclear. So no lot of discussion. You have to decide on your own. The million-dollar question is whether humanity will survive or not. Thank you.
It was 2 minutes, so if you have two speakers, you can come back in the end, because it's more fair. Okay. Then we have, thank you, Bangladesh. Then we have Iran, and after that, Marshall Islands. Iran, you have the floor.
Bismillah ar-Rahman.
In the name of God, the compassionate, the merciful, Mr. Chair, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished delegation, the history of nuclear weapons is a reminiscence of the most heinous event in the history and the gravest genocide and abuse of scientific achievements by human. The nuclear bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki by the United States of America have created a human catastrophe of unprecedented dimensions and critically endangered the human security. Accordingly, all states must cooperate with each other to prevent the reception of such catastrophes. The Islamic Republic of Iran, along with many other nations, has always been and will remain to be one of the main advocates and rigid supporters of a nuclear weapons-free world. We, as a victim of weapons of mass destruction, WMD, and living in a region where Israel's nuclear program threatens the peoples of the Middle East, consistently supported the realization of the objective of the total elimination of nuclear weapons, as in our view, it is the only absolute and viable guarantee against the use or threat of the use of nuclear weapons. Iran's 1974 initiative for the establishment of a nuclear weapon-free zone in the Middle East and the issuance of a religious decree by His Eminence, the Supreme Leader of the Islamic Republic of Iran, to prohibit WMD, particularly nuclear weapons, clearly indicates our position in this regard. While the nuclear weapon states have pledged under Article 6 of the NPT to negotiate in good faith on effective measures for nuclear disarmament, their lack of participation at the Conference of Negotiation, a legally binding instrument to prohibit nuclear weapons, signifies a failure to comply with their obligation therein, discriminates the situation. Despite the point that the treaty is an important step towards nuclear disarmament, however, the main objective for the Islamic Republic of Iran is to conclude a comprehensive nuclear disarmament convention, in pursuit of which the treaty of banning nuclear weapons could create a momentum for its realization. To conclude, I would like to reiterate the long-standing support of the Islamic Republic of Iran for the total elimination of nuclear weapons. We will indeed continue to cooperate with all nations in this vein. This is a collective responsibility, and we stand ready to fulfill it faithfully. It's our strategic belief that possessing nuclear weapon is religiously abandoned. Not also the Middle East, but whole the world should be free from the nuclear weapon.
و نه تنها خاورمیانه بلکه باید جهان آری از سلاح هسته‌ای داشته باشیم. Thanks you very much.
Okay, thank you. Next is Marshall Islands, and after that Pakistan. Marshall Islands, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chairman. After 2 days of traveling all the way here to St. Petersburg, thank you for the 2 minutes allocated. I'll try to stick to that. I'll be speaking not as an expert on disarmament, but I will speak more so as a victim and a survivor of nuclear tests, which we usually refer to as nuclear holocaust. 67 bombs tested in the Marshall Islands by the United States government in 1946 to 1958, similar to what Kazakhstan people have endured through the testing of the Russian government. Marshall Islands tells the world today, as nuclear survivors and victims, that nuclear weapon and human being should not coexist. Nuclear weapon and human being cannot coexist. The disarmament is overdue. Not yesterday, not tomorrow, or rather not today, not tomorrow, but it should have been already done yesterday. And as a victim and a survivor, we go all over the world and tell the people that this should not be repeated anywhere in the world. In the Marshall Islands, I heard some of our colleagues here mention Hiroshima and Nagasaki several times. Marshall Island bomb tests were 108,000 kilotons. That's 7,000 more powerful than the one that were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Unfortunately, a small island country like Marshall Islands is rarely mentioned in this big forum. But we are asking our experts and our countries to stand with the Marshall Islands in not permitting nuclear tests to happen to any other countries or any other people. The highest cause of death in the Marshall Islands, aside from diabetes, second highest is cancer as a result of radiogenic diseases. We have victims that continue to live with cancer, and we have people that have died as a result of exposure to radiation, similar to Kazakhstan. So I'm here to share with us and put a human face to what we're discussing here. We discussed treaties, we discussed documents, we discussed policies and strategies. But let's look at what we have to look at the end of the day, the people that are involved. We should not permit nuclear weapon to be tested or to be used in this planet. Like I said, human being and nuclear weapon should not coexist. Thank you for the time.
Thank you. Next is Pakistan, and after that, Thailand. Pakistan, you have the floor.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Pakistan remains committed to the goal of a nuclear weapon-free world through the conclusion of a universal, verifiable, and non-discriminatory comprehensive convention on nuclear weapons. However, the Conference on Disarmament, which is the only multilateral disarmament negotiating body in the world, remains the most ideal forum for concluding such a convention. Pakistan believes that the goal of universal disarmament can only be achieved by adopting a consensus-based process involving the relevant stakeholders. However, the Treaty on Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons do not fully take into account the legitimate security concerns of all the states. It is because of this reason that Pakistan abstained from taking part in negotiation process of the said treaty. Pakistan reaffirms its commitment to nuclear disarmament in a way that promotes peace, security, and stability at all the levels, and also pave the way forward towards equal and undiminished security for all the states. And I believe this is the high time for UN to provide the non-nuclear weapon states the negative security assurances as per its commitments. And I would conclude by inviting Mr. Blair to Pakistan. As he mentioned, let me assure you that Pakistan has a very robust command and control system. It has been visited by IAEA and other officials, and there is no chance of any TTP to come and take away the nuclear weapons, and it is under the leadership of the Prime Minister of Pakistan. So be assured, and I would be very happy to welcome you and host you to Pakistan.
Thank you, Pakistan. Next is Thailand, and after that, Palestine. Thailand, you have the floor.
Yes, I myself agree with Ambassador Gomez that she was saying that we cannot accept status quo and we cannot do nothing on nuclear issues. Thailand firmly believes that to achieve and sustain global peace and security, states must step up our collective efforts regarding disarmament and non-proliferation of all types, weapons of mass destruction. Therefore, Thailand welcomed the historic adoption of the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons on July the 7th in New York. Thailand is glad to be part of the process leading toward the adoption of the treaty, clearing the pathway to a world without nuclear weapons. From our being the depository state of Southeast Asia, Nuclear Weapon-Free Zone Treaty, or Treaty of Bangkok, co-hosting a regional roundtable on the humanitarian impact of nuclear weapons and prospect of a ban treaty in 2015, to our chairmanship of the open-end working group on taking forward multilateral nuclear disarmament negotiation in 2016, which led to the commencement of the treaty negotiation in 2017. Now Thailand has become one of the first 3 countries to sign and ratify the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons up on the first day of it being open for the signature. Thank you.
Thank you, Thailand. And next is Palestine, and after that, Australia. Palestine, you have the floor. Not in the room anymore. Then it goes to Australia, and after that, if it's possible, Argentina. Australia, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair and Madam Secretary. I'll just make a few points. Australia, the community in Australia is proud that our country was one of the birthplaces of ICANN, and we congratulate them for the Nobel Peace Prize. Australia obviously was a nation that has experienced nuclear tests. The British nuclear tests occurred in the 1950s, and that's not often, as my colleague from the Marshall Islands mentioned, that's not often acknowledged. We have people in Australia who continue to suffer the effects of nuclear fallout. We are one of the nations that is the largest producer of fissile material in the world. We are also apparently a beneficiary of the US nuclear umbrella, and that, I guess, is the the key reason that the current government in Australia has not supported the treaty on the prohibition of nuclear weapons, but there are many parliamentarians, including myself, who do support that, and I hope we make progress towards it. I guess I would say, as someone who has very little international experience, that there is a tendency in the world on the big problems, on the wicked problems like climate change and nuclear disarmament, to see those situations as being complicated and finely balanced, and to characterise the advocates of change as being naive and unrealistic and risky. I think we need to break out of that mindset if we are to see real change. We need to be less risk averse. We need to challenge those kinds of assumptions. In my part of the world, New Zealand has shown the way. I hope that the Australian Parliament and ultimately the Australian government will show the same kind of courage.
Thank you, Australia. And Argentina in English, do you want the floor? Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, that was the conditions. And finally then, under the condition 1 minute, Bangladesh, 1 minute.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. First of all, let me thank Blair, Ambassador Gomez, and Colin for their very informative facts and figures. Particularly, Dr. Blair, you have given a very dangerous position situation. I'm very disturbed. Now, I have only one question. When you have conflicting interests, particularly big powers, whether it is Russia, America, China, India, Pakistan, whoever it may be, whatever contract or agreement you sign, do you think it will be possible to implement? It won't be. So I have one suggestion. Who will be most affected? The future generation, younger generation. So I request Chairperson, Honorable, and other distinguished delegates, take initiative, organize around the world, young generation. They should move immediately against the government, against the parliament members, against the scientists, not to pursue any research to develop nuclear weapons. It is the younger generation, those who will be affected. So if we can mobilize around the world, the younger generation, they will force their government, they will force their scientists, they will force their those who are interested around nuclear weapons. Only then it will be stopped. Whatever agreement you sign, many agreements have been signed in the UN, have not been properly implemented. It will not be blended. You will not be able to see nuclear-free world. I will not be able to see it. You will not be able to see it. So what we should do, I humbly request, you have taken enough time, Ambassador Gomez and Dr. Blair, you have given us such a dangerous situation. When I go back to Bangladesh, because my country is surrounded by two big powers, India and Pakistan. In case of any accident, Bangladesh will vanish within 1 or 2 hours. So, as my colleague mentioned, Bangladesh declared as back as in 1973 UN General Assembly that Bangladesh is not going for nuclear weapons, but we are surrounded by two big powers. On the other side, China. So thank you for your time. Please take initiative with our younger generation.
Okay, thank you, Bangladesh, for your commitment to this question. So we will have a final round from the panel, and I don't know who wants to start to comment. Dr. Blair, or who won? Dr. Blair?
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the statements. I think that, you know, throwing a wet blanket on things and depressing everyone, I apologize for that, but I think I'm being realistic in pointing out the dangers, and I would go further to say that all of the pronouncements of all of the nuclear weapons countries to the effect that they are exercising restraint, that they have made commitments to no first use, et cetera, don't carry that much weight with me, because I think in every single country the trend is adverse. Pakistan has a fast-growing nuclear arsenal, and its weapons are not safe. Just like a lot of American weapons, some of them are still not completely safe, and a lot of them were not safe just a decade ago. India is also building a nuclear arsenal and preparing to operationalize that arsenal for possible use in a conflict with China or Pakistan. And to this end, Prime Minister Modi was just given a nuclear football about 2 years ago, the so-called famous black satchel that links him through special communication circuits to his nuclear forces so that Prime Minister Modi can expedite the authorization for the use of Indian nuclear weapons. So the trends are negative everywhere. China, yeah, it used to exercise restraint, in fact was a model for the rest of the world because it kept all of its nuclear weapons in one storage location in China at a place called Taipei, and now it is in the process of dispersing those weapons into the field. I could go on and on and on with examples of how all of the nuclear weapons countries are moving exactly in the wrong direction. So, as I say, there's really no consolation here for me. I would add two other quick points. One is that the United States bombed itself about as many times as it exploded weapons in the atmosphere in the Marshall Islands. I think the United States may have conducted on the order of 50 or 60 tests above ground in the state of Nevada, and those tests were responsible for increasing cancer deaths and also for the emergence in the teeth of small American children of radioactive materials like strontium-90. And as a result of that contamination, the mothers of these children in the United States organized and marched and protested and persuaded the government of the United States to reach an accord to end atmospheric nuclear testing, which leads me to a critical point here that I think for this agenda to ever succeed, there has to be a public outrage and a public protest and a public movement. It's not enough. It's not enough to pass resolutions in the UN or IPU or even to negotiate a treaty. It's not enough. There has to be a ground game. We have to be able to translate all of these good theories and principles and moral arguments into a communication strategy and an organizing strategy that reaches particularly young people around the world, but also the public at large. Climate change, there's been a conversation for a long time among the public about the need to control carbon emissions. And it makes regulation a lot easier, but we have absolutely no conversation around the world anywhere about this nuclear danger. And so Global Zero has a roadmap for step-by-step reductions leading to zero, but we're realistic about what it's going to take politically for that agenda to gain traction. And we have met many times in the White House with President Obama's senior people. I've met personally with Vice President Biden and others, and in every single case, they asked me to pound harder on the open door with public demands for the adoption of no first use, for further reductions in nuclear arms, et cetera, et cetera. So I appeal to you to think about a theory of change here that would somehow translate what you're doing and thinking along the lines that we've been discussing into a movement particularly in the nuclear weapons countries, which is going to require a very strong public movement in order to move the needle of policy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Blair. And now we will have some brief comments from Mr. Collin before we go to the final words from Ambassador White-Gomez. Mr. Collin.
Collin.
En commentaire, vous dire que, voilà, après mon intervention déjà...
As a commentary, I would like to state the following. After my statement, one parliament from Belgium undersigned on the undertaking. And I would like to urge you all to prove that you're willing to work for nuclear disarmament, and I am at your disposal for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Collin. And now, finally, Ambassador White-Gomez.
Thank you very much. Two thoughts to the colleague from the Marshall Islands. Please take the copy of the treaty with you. I am sure that you will be pleased by what you read there because of the humane nature of the treaty that was signed. But as my colleagues have mentioned, legal texts we can pile up in a room, in a library, if we do not take action. We need to put pressure for change. Inaction is not an option. Maintaining the status quo is only bringing us to the border, to the collapse. I have heard many explanations of why the situation is the way it is. We cannot take those explanations anymore. We need proposals for the way forward. No more explanations for the way things are. If we do not promote change, change is going to happen by itself. But in this case, there is no reversibility. Thank you very much.
And I will say finally, thank you to the panelists for very good contributions, interesting discussions, and thank you to all of you for your comments and actually not questions this time. And this is a good sign maybe. So thank you once again and have a nice evening. Goodbye.